Hi, it's Brian Kelleher with Keller Williams Realty. Well, it's been all over the news the last month or so about this National Association of Realtors legal settlement, and I want to talk about that today. So stick around for some good information. Well, we've all seen it in the headlines about this National Association of Realtors legal settlement, and like everything else in the headlines, it doesn't always give you the most accurate and clear picture as to what is actually going on. So I want to touch on a few things today, and there's no way I can touch on all the aspects of this settlement, and in all likelihood these changes wouldn't go into effect until later this year anyway, because this settlement still needs to be approved by the courts. But here's a few things I want to touch on, some things that I've seen in the news. First is that because of the settlement, that commissions somehow are going to be drastically reduced or go away altogether. Well, this simply isn't the case, and it's really not what this lawsuit was about. One aspect of the lawsuit was that quite often how it would work would be a seller would hire a listing agent and that listing agent's brokerage to represent them in the sale of their home. And they would agree to pay them a certain commission in the sale of that home. And if a buyer who's represented by a different agent came and made an offer to purchase that home and ultimately bought that home, that listing agent's brokerage would quite often share roughly half of their commission with the buyer agent's brokerage. So an aspect of this lawsuit was that sellers didn't feel like it was a clear process. They were not really feeling informed about who they were paying in the process, and they felt like they were strong-armed and forced into paying that buyer agent. So one aspect of the settlement is that going forward, when these changes go into effect, the seller must be given a clear and transparent choice as to whether any of the commissions they are agreeing to pay will go towards compensating a buyer agent's brokerage in the process. And they cannot be forced to offer anything to the buyer agent's brokerage. So ultimately, in my opinion, how this will shake out in the end is that sellers will be responsible for compensating the listing agent's brokerage, and buyers will be responsible for paying the buyer agent's brokerage. The commissions aren't really going to change, and commissions aren't necessarily going away because of the settlement. Number two is, that we've seen in the headlines a lot, is that somehow this settlement is going to cause real estate prices to drop. And I don't see a lot of merit in that argument. I suppose the argument could be made that if commissions were in fact going away, that whatever the amount of those commissions are, the home prices may fall by that amount. However, commissions aren't going away. They're still a part of the process. And so I just don't see a lot in that reasoning that home prices are going to fall because of the settlement. And the third thing that's been in the headlines a lot is that somehow the settlement is going to upend and drastically change the way that homes are bought and sold in the United States. And it's really not going to change a lot in the process. There will certainly be some changes as to who is responsible for paying who in the process. There'll definitely be some changes to how properties can be advertised for sale. But ultimately, the process in itself is not going to change a lot. Sellers will still hire listing agents and listing agents' brokerages to list their homes for sale, and buyers will hire buyer agent brokerages to help them in the purchase of a home. Process really isn't going to change very much. Another change that I believe is a welcome change is that going forward, if a real estate agent is going to take a potential buyer, to look at homes, they must have a written agreement with that buyer that they are representing that buyer in the purchase of a home. So why is this a welcome change? Well, it just means that when a buyer is coming to see a property, they've at least, at a very minimum, sat down and signed a buyer agency agreement. They'll be more informed about the process, and it'll just be a more transparent process. And sellers can have the confidence that buyers who are coming to see their home with a real estate agent are actually, they have a signed representation agreement, and that they're not just some stranger from the internet coming through their home. So how do real estate agents feel that this is going to really change the process going forward? How is it going to change the industry? Well, in my opinion, the real estate industry is going to emerge just stronger, and it's going to be a clear and more transparent process in the end. Buyers are going to be more informed about the process, and sellers are going to be more informed in the process. And most of the changes that are going into effect are really going to make it just a better process all around. So I hope that helps to clear some of these things up that we've been seeing in the news. It's a lot of information, and like I said, there's no way I can touch on all the aspects of this lawsuit. But if you have any questions about how this may affect your either purchase or sale of your home going forward, please shoot me an email or a text. And in the meantime, thanks for tuning in and stay in touch.